recorded live.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Rod. I want to bring up some more things for you guys to think about. Last segment we talked about how the government has come in with the slavery and how they brought people in, the Native Americans, on how they sit here and claimed ownership over everything. But yet, the United States government did not pay for one single thing. It was the people that bought and paid, because the government is a public office with a 4-year term. And this creates a very serious issue here with what we're dealing with, because I want to read something to you. It's under Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. To exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over such district, not exceeding 10 miles square, as made by concession by a particular state in the acceptance of Congress, become the seat of the government of the United States, and to exercise like authority over all places purchased by the consent of the legislation of the states in which the same shall be for the erection of forts, magazines, arsenals, docks, yards, and other needful buildings. Purchase. Did they purchase the land off of the Native Americans? Did they purchase any of this? They came in and said, well, we're going to give you. We already have. No, that belongs to, did you purchase it? The questions were posed right. Did you purchase it? How do you own it? This comes down into words, comes down into phrasing. But I also want to bring up this to you, ladies and gentlemen. We have been taught throughout our lifetime, being born, that certain words, certain items are absolutely illegal. Totally illegal. They have gun laws against them. They have bans against them. What they are not telling you, and I'm going to go back in and I'm going to use the word firearm here. Because, ladies and gentlemen, that is one of the main issues that right now that's in this country that we're dealing with. They're telling you that firearms are illegal. If any of you would take the time, and this is why I keep saying and stressing to you, read the law. Read the foundation. Get in and understand the concept behind all this. Because once you get in and you read it and you understand it, you're going to find out that they've taken it totally out of context. Because if you will take the time and go look, you will find firearms in what sections of the law. Title 27 CFR is what? That's the thing, what we're going to sit here and ask you. Title 27 CFR. Title 27, if you look it up, falls under alcohol, tobacco, products, and firearm, ATF. Title 27 CFR 479.11 falls under ATF. Title 26, 5845, look it up. United States Code. Title 26, United States Code, 5845. Title 26 is IRS. Firearms falls under taxes. It falls under, if you have to pay a $200 tax, and now this is where, if you will look up and take the time and get into the National Firearms Act under volume 48. Go down to chapter 757, page 1236, and get in and start reading. And what it talks about is that dealers, now think about what we're saying here, dealers can have these items. And what does the dealer have to turn around and do? He has to get a license. He has to pay a tax. So are they illegal to have? No. They're busting you for taxes on it. Failure to pay the tax. But what are they coming across and trying to tell the jury? Oh my God, these are illegal. You're not allowed to have any of these, but yet they manufacture them. They're not telling the jury that they didn't pay the tax on it. It's a tax issue. If you'd pay the taxes on it, you can have them. But they're not telling the jury this. Your lawyer is not telling you this. This is where the issue comes in. Ladies and gentlemen, there is so much here that is being left out. That is absolutely being left out of what is going on here. When this stuff goes up before a jury, and this is something else I want to sit back and I want to make you people think here a little bit about. You and I are not ever being charged for a civil action in any of these courts. You and I are being charged criminally in these courts. If you and I are being charged criminally, we are being charged for a felony, then you and I should have a grand jury hear the case before you and I are dragged in, and there is never a grand jury on you and I. Unless they really want to sit down and they kick this thing up when it's convenient. Traffic stop. Well, that's a felony. That's criminal homicide. Where's the grand jury? Criminal neglect. Where's the grand jury? They do a grand jury when it's convenient, and they're getting away from grand juries. Grand juries, when there is one, they are to be told the truth. I want you to get into United States Attorney's Manual, USAM, United States Attorney's Manual, under 9-1. 11-000. And look this up. What the duties for the grand jury? Nature of the grand jury is also under the federal court system. If you get into it, we'll sit here and look up the grand juries, and it gets into the histories and the duties of the grand jury. Under one section, it gets into the nature of the grand jury. The power and function of the federal grand jury differs from those of the federal trial jury, which is called the petit jury. The petit jury listens to the evidence offered by the prosecution and the defense. If it chooses to offer anything, during criminal trial and return of the verdict of guilty or not guilty, the grand jury, on the other hand, does not determine guilt or innocence, but rather there is probable cause to believe that a crime was committed and that a specific person or persons committed it. If the grand jury finds probable cause to exist, it will return a written statement of the charges called an indictment. After that, the accused will go to trial. The grand jury normally hears only that evidence presented by an attorney for the government which tends to show the commission of a crime. The grand jury must determine from this evidence, and usually without hearing evidence for the defense, whether a person shall be tried for a serious federal crime referred to as the Bill of Rights as an infamous crime, or infamous crime. An infamous crime is one which may be punished by imprisonment for more than 1 year. And remember what we talked about infamous? It's a felony. Think about what we're sitting here saying. If traffic violations are a felony, then there should be a grand jury. If not having a tail light is a felony, because it is called an infamous crime, then this should be before a grand jury. And ladies and gentlemen, you and I are not going before grand juries all the time. They pick and choose. As a general rule, no one can be prosecuted for a serious crime unless the grand jury indicts that the evidence it has heard so requires. In this way, the grand jury operates both as a sword authorizing the government's prosecution of suspected criminals and also as a shield protecting citizens from unwarranted and inappropriate prosecution. But you know what they sit here and didn't say? They only said what the prosecution put before them. They did not sit here and say that you are allowed to go before that grand jury and testify and put your own evidence in. They're leaving that out. But if you sit down and listen to what's being said here, as a general rule, no one can be prosecuted for a serious crime unless the grand jury decides that the evidence it has heard so requires. In this way, the grand jury operates both as a sword authorizing the government's prosecution of suspected criminal and also as a shield protecting citizens from unwarranted and inappropriate prosecution. A person may, however, waive grand jury proceedings and agree to the prosecution by a written charge of crime until called information. If you waive, that means that you refuse to go before the grand jury. Is your lawyer telling you that you can go before the grand jury? No, he is not. Ladies and gentlemen, you have the right. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is this. I got invited to a grand jury. I got invited to my own grand jury because I made the issue. And we're going to ask for prayers on this. to open up the grand jury's eyes. Because what I just read you out of the grand jury handbook for the federal is this supposed to be a two-edged sword. How can they act as a shield on your behalf if nobody is putting evidence in on your behalf? If nobody is sitting here telling your side of the story? This goes back to what everybody has said here and said, is that grand jury can indict a Swiss cheese sandwich. For the mere fact, is this a Swiss cheese sandwich? Yes, it is. Well, you got an indictment. Where's the law that says you're not allowed to have a Swiss cheese sandwich? This is what we bring up about the word firearm. Everybody's being told firearms are illegal. It is against the law. They are a forbidden item. Ladies and gentlemen, Title 27 CFR is alcohol, firearms, and tobacco, ATF. Title 26 United States Code is IRS. They're not telling the jury that you failed to pay the tax on a fully automatic machine gun. You failed to pay the tax on a sawed-off shotgun, a sawed-off rifle, or a silencer. You failed to pay the tax. They're not telling the jury this. But most of you people don't understand this. It is a tax issue. You failed to pay the tax. If you paid the tax on a machine gun, you paid the tax on a sawed-off rifle and a sawed-off shotgun and a silencer, it's no longer illegal to have because you paid the tax on it, and you will have the license and the documentation that supports it. You're not being told this. The juries are not being told this. This is the same thing with what we're trying to get across to you about automobiles and a motor vehicle. A motor vehicle weighs over 10,001 pounds. Now stop and think what I just said here and said. A motor vehicle weighs over 10,001 pounds. That is a motor vehicle. Again, it comes back into interpretation of words. An automobile weighs out less than 10,000 pounds. Automobile is under Title 49, CFR, the 523.23. Definitions of words, ladies and gentlemen. Definitions of words. We are being tried in these courts under definition of words. We are being railroaded because of definition of words. We don't know the difference. We do not understand the difference, and we are not bringing these issues up. Let me bring something else up to you out of the United States Attorney's Manual that sits here and deals with the grand jury side of this. While the grand jury are sometimes described as performing accusatory or investigation functions, the grand jury's principal function is to determine whether or not there is probable cause to believe that one or more persons committed a certain federal offense within the jurisdiction of the district court. Thus, it has been said the grand jury has but two functions: to indict and alter, or to return no bill. At common law, grand jury enjoys a certain power to issue reports alleging non-criminal conduct. A special grand jury in panels under Title 18, 3331 is authorized on the basis of criminal investigation, but not otherwise. A fashion a report potential for public release concerning either organized crime conditions in the district or non-organized crime is an office of appointed officials or employees. Grand jury has two functions, and we're not being told this. We're not being told this. It further gets in here and explains that when the prosecutor goes before the grand jury, he is required to turn around. The prosecutor is required to sit down and put forth the real law before the grand jury. all the definitions, any case law, and this is what we're sitting here telling you people. This is what we are explaining. The prosecution going in is not doing their job according to their own set of rules. This is why they do not want you and I going in the courtroom. But part of the problem with you and I going before the grand jury is that you and I are not educated well enough to state our position. You and I are not educated well enough to come in and sit back and show where the prosecution has misled and misrepresented the law. There are many case laws that deals with traffic issues on the right to travel and makes a distinction. There are many case laws out here that deals with the word firearm. It shows that you do have a Second Amendment right to carry. But one thing that does come out of this, and even under the National Firearms Act, is that the stuff has to be registered. That is a requirement. It has to be registered. This way they know where it went. But ladies and gentlemen, this is why education on our side is so important. This is why education on our side needs to be done. You and I are being denied access to the grand jury for the simple reason they don't want us going before the grand jury and laying some of this stuff out. On the other hand, some of you people going before the grand jury, all you want to do is ramble. And you don't want to stay to the point of coming in and saying, excuse me, did the prosecutor inform you that under Title 49 CFR under 523.23 automobile, that this is the definition? Under Title 49 CFR, deals with licenses, did he sit here and tell you this? Under a firearms charge, did the prosecution under Title 27 or 79.11 under the National Firearms Act, did he sit here and tell you that this is what a firearm is? Did he sit and tell you that it's not illegal to have, that the only issue is that you had to pay tax on it? That this is a tax issue? Did he bother telling you this? Where's your proof? Here is the documentation. Here is the statutes at large that sits here and validates this. Here is out of the USC codes. Here is out of CFR. Here's the evidence. He intentionally, deliberately misled you. Oh, by the way, here's case law that says the laws that they're charging you with has been repealed. Cases have been overturned. Your laws have been found unconstitutional. The laws were taken out of context. Here's case law. Oh, case law is only an opinion. Okay, well then any decision that the judge makes in this court case is strictly an opinion and not a offense that can be held accountable. Ladies and gentlemen, court rulings are not opinions. Whenever they sit here and they pass a court ruling from the Supreme Court that sits here and says, you have a Second Amendment right, you have the right to carry, that's not an opinion. When they come back in and say they're overturning the law for that particular town or that particular state or that particular issue, it sits here and says you do have a Second Amendment right. Ladies and gentlemen, that's not an opinion. That court is supposed to uphold that decision, and they're not doing it. When they sit back and say you have the right to travel, or taxes, income tax is unconstitutional, these rulings have substantial merit of how they're supposed to be upheld. They are not telling the jury this. They're not telling the grand jury this. When you bring in an act of Congress and they sit down and say, well, that really doesn't mean anything, then you bring in the statutes at large and you show how everything on their side was created, and then it has an entirely different meaning to it, because now if acts of Congress doesn't mean anything, you have just officially taken these people out of their job. You have effectively dissolved all these agencies. I want you to think about what we're talking about here. I want you to consider what we're talking about here. This is why the significance of all this is important to you. This is why these issues that we're laying out here have very important merits of what we're teaching. Because, ladies and gentlemen, your livelihood depends on it. Education on our side needs to come up. We need to start educating their side. Words that are written are very important to how we have been taught. The attorneys will not bring any of this up. The attorney will not even tell you that you're allowed to go to the grand jury. The attorney will not put any evidence in on your behalf prior to the grand jury. He will not file one single document in on your behalf. So anything that goes to the grand jury is strictly what the prosecution put in. And that is all they can see. Your lawyer will not file one document in that comes in and clears you before a grand jury. They will not. This is where you have to start doing your own paperwork. Right at the get-go, right at the gate. As soon as that horse leaves the gate, as soon as that prosecutor leaps out of that gate, you better be leaping with him. The moment that police officer leaps out of that gate and he slams that charge against you, you better be slamming a counterclaim against him, and you better be putting stuff in that shows that document is incorrect and wrong. The problem of it is you've never been taught. The problem of it is you've never done it. You've always been told by the attorneys, wait till after the hearing. Wait till you get to the hearing. Ladies and gentlemen, we've talked about this. We have talked about this. You don't wait till the day of the hearing to do something. You don't wait because it's too late if you turn around and you wait. This is why I sit down and I tell you people right off the bat, the moment you get charged, your paperwork starts within a half hour or less after you get home. As soon as you get home, your paperwork starts. You do not wait until the trial starts or after you've already been found guilty to come in and do paperwork. Do not wait until that time period. Ladies and gentlemen, you start your paperwork immediately. You start it immediately. Because this is the only way that you're going to get ahead. You go in and you find the case law. You find the definition. You make the legal issue before that court. That court's going to sit back and say, well, Mr. Class, you can't bring legal issues before this court. You drug me in here on a legal issue. You created a legal issue whenever I got dragged into this courtroom. These legal issues, ladies and gentlemen, are the errors that the court is intentionally making in order to get a conviction on you. This is the judge's immunity. This is the judge's, well, he can sit back and claim, well, I was within my judicial powers and therefore I have immunity. Well, he does if you don't sit here and bring any of this stuff up. You have to bring this stuff up, ladies and gentlemen. You've got to bring it in. You've got to sit down and bring this stuff forward. Because if you don't, who is? I also want to bring something up to you because I'm coming across some of the stuff on the texts that I'm dealing with here. Title 42, Section 1716, presumption of death or detention. The determination that an individual is dead or a determination that he has been detained by a hostile force or persons may be made on the basis of evidence that he has disappeared under circumstances such as to make such death or disappearance probable. Enemy forces. Public Law 85-608, substitute a hostile force or person for the enemy. You and I have been declared enemies of the state. That is Title 42, Section 1716. Assignments of benefits, execution, levy, and against benefits. The right of any person to any benefit under subchapter 1 of this title shall not be transferred or assigned at law or in equity except to the United States. And none of the money paid or payable except money paid hereunder as reimbursement for funeral expenses or as reimbursement with respect to payment of workman's comp or in the nature of workman's compensation benefits, or rights existing under such subchapter shall be subject to execution of levy, attachments, garnishments, or other legal process, or to the operation of any bankruptcy or insolvency. Right, ladies and gentlemen? Title 42. Go down and read this. Very interesting. Section 1716 and Section 1717. But what I'm getting into in this is that, ladies and gentlemen, these are all acts of Congress. These are all acts of Congress of what we are dealing with. What I'm also getting into is I want to find that section that we read here under Title 42, exhaustion of remedies. 1997E, application of administrative remedies. Sections subject to this provision of paragraph 2 in any action brought pursuant to Section 1983 of this title by an adult convict of a crime confined in any jail, prison, or other correctional facility, the court shall, if the person believes that such a requirement would be appropriate in the interest of justice, continue such case for a period of not exceeding 180 days in order to require exhaustion of such plain, speedy, and efficient administrative remedies as available. The exhaustion of administrative remedies under paragraph 1 may not be required unless the Attorney General has certificate or the court has determined that such administrative remedies are substantial compliance with the minimum accepted standard promulgated under Section B of this section, or are otherwise fair and executive. Minimum standards for development and implementation of the system for resolution of grievance of confined adults consolidates program admission by the Attorney General of Standard. Ladies and gentlemen, get in and read 1997E. Also read 1997D, prohibit of retaliation. No person reporting conditions which may constitute a violation under this subchapter shall be subject to retaliation in any manner for so reporting. Your administrative remedies, ladies and gentlemen, is to go before the administration, to the agency. That's what we have been teaching. This is what we brought up. We found, I had Harvey put out on the big list, that in Washington, D.C., that your administrative side has to go through the council. It could go through the mayor, but it has to go through the council. And your council in D.C. is the architect of capital, the sergeant of arms of the House and Senate, and the police board, which is all part of this. Ladies and gentlemen, words is what's getting us into trouble and our lack of knowledge and understanding. It's like I brought up earlier. Firearm. We all been taught firearm. But we have defined the word firearm. But they're trying to tell you they're illegal. They are doing bans on firearms. Ladies and gentlemen, it falls under Title 27 CFR ATF. It falls under the National Firearms Act. All you're required to do is pay the tax. Pay the tax. It's a $200 tax, or it may be more now. But if you pay the tax, that's the issue. They're not telling the jury this. They're not telling the people this. They're not telling the grand juries this. Is that you didn't pay the tax. They're just sitting there saying, oh, firearms are illegal. Firearms are illegal. We got a ban on firearms. If you pay the tax on it, and you got to go to ATF, you got to go to the IRS, and you got to get the proper paperwork, get the proper licensing, do it properly, get it taxed, get it paid for. They're not illegal. They're not disclosing any of this. The attorney's not disclosing this. Food for thought, ladies and gentlemen. Food for thought. Get better educated. Get better knowledgeable. Your livelihood depends on it. Someone can't do it for you. You have to do it yourself. We have gotten into a position to where we want other people to do it for us, and the lawyers have. They've done a real good job. We really need to pat them on the back on how well they've sold us out. How far they have railroaded us. Because we really want someone else to go do this for us. We don't want to take the time. We don't want to make the time. I'd rather have someone else do this for me. Well, they have. And that's why we're in the shape that we're in, and that's why we're in a boat that sinks. Responsibility, people, falls back on our shoulders. And until we start standing up, and until we start shouting, enough's enough, and start making legal issues in these courts. Because the bottom line boils down to, Mr. Class, you cannot make a legal issue in this court. Excuse me, is this a court of law or a court of inquisition? If it is a court of law, then the law has to be interpreted properly. If it's an inquisition, then this is a religious issue and I'm in the wrong church. I'm not a member. I do not want to be a member. Now, if we're going to have an inquisition, ladies and gentlemen, you've got to be able to speak up. You've got to be better knowledgeable than what you are. Think about what we're saying here. Give it some consideration. Like I said here said at the beginning, the American Indians had their property stolen off them because the government says we own it. And I just read to you under Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. They have to purchase it. They haven't. They can't. They didn't purchase anything. They took it because we didn't know any better. This whole program is about education, ladies and gentlemen. It's about knowledge. Have I been classified as a subversive from what I've told? Yes. Why? Because it goes back to McCarthyism in 1953. If you don't think like them and you don't share their opinion, and you don't agree with their concept, then you're a subversive. You have to agree to allow us to railroad you. Ladies and gentlemen, that's exactly what they did with the Native Americans. And look how they blasted them. Savages, uncouth. But I tell you what, these people were more civilized than a lot of the towns out west. If it wasn't for the Native Americans, Christopher Columbus and these people wouldn't have had land. And if they were smart, if they would have knew then what they know now, Christopher Columbus would have never left this country alive. They would have burned his ship. Pilgrims never would have come here. They would have burned their ship. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your country. These people that are sitting in office are elected every 4 years. Think about what I'm telling you. They are elected. This is not a permanent lifetime position like the Queen of England or some of these other monarchs in these other countries. We put these people in every 4 years. They do not own this country. They're supposed to be servants to you and I. They're supposed to be working for you and I. They're supposed to be working for our benefit, not their own. And if by any chance, if the rumors are true that Russia and China is sitting, waiting for you people, waiting for the American people to sit back and say, hey, help us to take out the corruption in this country. If these rumors are anywhere near true, then people, we need to start waking up. And we need to start uniting across this country as one. Don't sit back and say, what can I do about this? You are not by yourself. There is a movie going to be coming on here Sunday called Battle of Seattle. And it dealt with the World Trade Organization. Well, supposedly in 1999, 600 people in Seattle went to jail. And the World Trade Organization from around the world told people in Oregon, you will lull these people out of jail or we will call a world strike. Let me see if I could pull some history up on this, because my daughter told me about it, and it was on TV. It's supposed to be, again, this weekend. There's the Battle of Seattle, November 29th, 1999. The WTO. Protesters actively surrounded the WTO Minister Conferences of 1999, which was to be the launch of a new millennium round of trade negotiations occurring on November 30th, 1999, nicknamed N30, on a similar lines to J18 and similar to mobilization. When the World Trade Organization convention at the Washington State Convention and the Trade Center in Seattle, Washington, the United States, the negotiators were quickly overshadowed by massive and conversely street protesters outside the hotel in Washington State Convention Trade Center, in what became the second phase of the anti-global movement in the United States. The scale of the demonstrations, even the lowest estimate for the crowd was 40,000. Of course, any previous demonstration in the United States against the world meeting on any organization. So what happened here, from what my understanding is, that the police and these people came in and they took out these protesters. A worldwide strike was going to be called if these people were not let out of jail. Ladies and gentlemen, this happened in 1999. The battle in Seattle. Look it up. The movie portrayed and sit here and showed that the world got together to create a strike against the United States if they did not let these people out of jail. I just come across this. I need some more history on it. But it sits here and shows that you can stand up. We can get world recognition if the people ask for it. And ladies and gentlemen, we've got so much corruption within this system. We first need to stand up. If the rumors are right about Russia and China standing by, waiting for the American people to ask, the information that we have put out on this show of the corruption is a good foundation to get that help. Ladies and gentlemen, your rights are standing in the balance. When do you stand up? When do you speak out? The very people that's pointing at you and I and saying that we are under the McCarthyism or we are the Al-Qaeda, ladies and gentlemen, more and more documentation is coming out. The ones who's pointing the finger are the ones that's creating the problem, not the American people. Ladies and gentlemen, it's not Russia that's taking away our freedom. It is not China that is taking away our freedom. It's not Al-Qaeda that's taking away our freedom. It's not North Korea that's taking away our freedom. It's not the Muslims that's taking away our freedom. It is the people that we are electing every 4 years. The very people that we're putting in office is the ones that is stripping you and I of our freedom. No foreign nation is doing this to us. Our own people that we put in is doing it to us. Look at the history of this country. They did it to the slaves. They did it to the Native Americans. They did it to the women. And now they're doing it to the population. Our threat sits in that 10-mile square. That threat sits in your state capital. That threat sits in your county board. The very people that you and I put into office is our threat because they're not doing the job that they were hired to do. And when they get in these jobs, they give themselves immunities and put themselves above it. So when they get out, they're not affected by it. The threat is the people that we put in office for 4 years. Think about what I'm saying and show me where I am wrong. Russia hasn't threatened us, neither is China. We're being told Al-Qaeda is, but who is supporting Al-Qaeda? SEAL Team 6 pulled this proof up. Our own Congress is supporting them. Our own Congress gave them money. Our own Congress gave them everything they have today. The very people you and I put in office are traitors. They sold us out. Stand up, people. You're the only ones that can. That nobody else can do it for you. Think about what's being said here tonight. Do we need help? Yes. But for us to get that help, you first have to stand up. You first have to show that you want that help. That you're willing to make the change and not put the same people back in office again. Under the same circumstances. Whoever is in charge of these offices, we need to get rid of it. Whoever is threatening and intimidating these officials, we need to get rid of them and dispose of them. If it's IMF, Federal Reserve, I don't make no difference, ladies and gentlemen. They don't have any authority to take charge of this country and threaten those who we put into office under blackmail. Problem is, those who are going into office, if they would do their job, they could get rid of the threat. Thank you. You all have a good night.